everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking about Sense and Suitability by Pepper Basham. So, this one is a Regency romance, and I'd also call it a rom-com because it's quite a funny story, and it fits within the Christian fiction category, and it's a standalone story. So, why did I want to read this one? Well, I've loved reading books by Pepper Basham in the past, including Authentically, Izzy, and Some Like It, Scot. And you can actually go back and look up episode 11 on my show, where I actually did an episode on Some Like It, Scot, which is a contemporary rom-com set in Scotland. And you can find my book recommendations at my blog, and that's at narelleatkins.com, and there'll be a link in the show notes. So I'll add my usual disclaimer and say many thanks to the publisher who provided an advance reader copy, and all the opinions that I express in this episode are completely my own. So let's talk about the book. Sense and Suitability by Pepper Basham is a Regency romance. So we're in Regency, England, and we're in a small town. It's a spa town, so it's kind of similar to Bath. And there are a number of romance tropes in this one. So it's a second chances romance, and it also has the enemies to love trope combined with second chances, which is always fun. We have a couple of matchmaking aunts in this story to torture our main characters, which you'll hear about soon. We also have bookish characters. So our leading lady is actually hiding a big secret. She's a published Gothic romance author. And being a published author and a female back in these times was a very scandalous thing to do. So she's anonymous in terms of her being the author. We also have family drama, and we have a lot of family drama, especially with our hero's family and his wayward younger siblings who cause him a lot of grief. And we have the Jane Austen contemporary story world. So, back at the time that this book's written, so we're in the Regency era, Jane had started publishing her books, and Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice are in print and published and being read by our characters during this story. So I really appreciated that fun Jane Austen element that's added into the story as well. And also, Jane Austen was anonymous at that time, and it wasn't publicly known who the author was behind the books that were very contemporary and very relatable, being contemporary stories then, even though these days we probably think of them as being classic historical stories. So, anyway, let's talk about the first line, which is from the prologue, which is this one. Emmeline Lockhart's life teemed with secrets. So I've already hinted at her first big secret, which is that she's a secret Gothic romance author. And that's something that she's hiding from everyone except for her cousin, who's the rector of the local parish. And he's the one that's been assisting her with her publishing ventures and dealing with the financial side of that. Now, Emmy is almost 20 years old. She's single after having two failed seasons. So she's done the rounds of the ballrooms twice and has failed to land a husband, which is a bit of a problem because obviously back in the Regency times, it's for females and for women, the most important thing is to have a suitable marriage that will provide for them and future children, etc., etc. So at the start of the story in the prologue, she's about to meet Simon. So Simon was a very eligible gentleman and her suitor who was a little bit above her station. And they kind of accidentally met at different times, and he fell for her and she fell for him. And he has promised to meet her at this ball and he's going to propose to her. So she's at this ball expecting him to propose, and then something goes wrong and she's handed a note where he asks her to forgive him. And then he disappears. And she hears about what he's up to, but she's got no idea about what's really going on with his life because gossips will gossip, and who knows what's being said is true or not true. So, anyway, at the beginning of chapter one, Emmy is dealing with her aunt. And now her aunt is, how can I put it? She thinks she's being helpful and she's just hilarious. The things that come out of this woman's mouth are just laugh out loud funny. And so Emmy's aunt is really concerned that she's heading into her third season and she's failed to land a husband. So she's on this mission to marry Emmy off before the end of the season. And let's introduce us now to Simon. So he's our hero. And since the prologue, his life has had a drastic turn and a whole lot of stuff has happened. And he's now inherited a Viscount title from his cousin who passed away back when the prologue was happening. And he's now got this estate and land, and the whole thing's a complete mess. There's financial problems to deal with. And at the same time, since this time, his parents have both passed away. So he and his younger siblings are all orphans, and he's now dealing with wild and wayward and feral younger siblings for different reasons, which we learn about in the story. So he has an aunt who is his mother's sister who has turned up to assist him with his situation. And she's prepared to provide some money to effectively give him an allowance to keep him going because his finances are getting a bit grim. And she has a few conditions on her help. And one of those is that she assists him in finding a wife so that he can marry well for status and money because now he's a Viscount. Everything's different to a couple of years ago. And if he can marry a lady that has a good dowry, that will fix his financial problems and get the estate back on track. And then his siblings that really need a female figure in their lives will gain a mother figure as well. So he's in this situation where he's in a corner. He really hasn't got a lot of good options. And one of the better options, according to his aunt, is for him to get married. So that's where he's up to in the story. So, of course, he's returned to his ancestral home, which is in the same village and town that Emmy lives in. So they can't avoid each other. So that brings us to our meet cute. And when they hear about each other being around town, they want to avoid each other. And they're at a ball and they do avoid each other until they can't avoid each other because of the tricky situation they get into. So they meet cute. It's embarrassing. It's awkward. It's quirky. It's funny. It's got all of those elements that you want in a meet cute. And they can't avoid each other and they can't avoid being close to each other physically. So there's some physical proximity that puts them close together, which means that all those old feelings that they've both been working very hard to ignore and forget about are still there, which is a perplexing situation for both of them. And it's completely ridiculous and it's very cute. So I do like the meet cute in this story. And so we have so many problems that our characters need to overcome. And the biggest one being a Regency is society expectations. So particularly now that Simon's a Viscount, he is now in a situation where what other people think about him and his family matters. He's now got people that rely on him and he needs to get on track with sorting out the mess that he's inherited from his cousin and to a lesser extent his father's actions and behavior as well. And they have actually brought some scandal onto him that he has to now overcome. So he really needs to marry someone who has money to help him fix his immediate problem and who also has the right status to try and improve the family name as well. He can't afford to get involved with a woman who's going to bring any kind of scandal or disrepute to the family. And so Emmy's biggest problem is that she's trying to hide her life as a gothic romance author. And she really wants to marry for love. She doesn't want to marry just because that's what's expected of her. And so she does see her writing as a way of building a nest egg and potentially being able to live independent as a spinster if that becomes her destiny, because she's not prepared to just settle. But she also has an interfering aunt, and her aunt is just determined to marry her off. And she's on a mission to get her married. And that's her cousin, the rector's mother. And it's all gets very complicated with the shenanigans that happen in that circumstance and those situations. So with the relationship between Emmy and Simon, so what happened 2 years ago when he left at the ball is completely unresolved at the start of chapter one. And they both of them really need to get over each other, but of course there are reasons because the heart wants what the heart wants that they have trouble getting over each other. And Simon's got to deal with the mess with the estate that he's inherited. And the family drama continues, particularly with his younger siblings who are just adorable in so many ways, but There's a point in the story where someone refers to one of them as being feral, and that's really not wrong. There's some very interesting things that happen in this story, and I absolutely loved it. It was an absolute delight and a pleasure to read. And the romance, it had all the feels, it had all of the enemies to love and second chances trope mixed together that I really like. And there were so many real and logical reasons as to why these two just couldn't get together and get married despite how they felt. And they really had to forgive a lot of stuff in the past. They both had a lot of emotional baggage and they had to forgive past hurts in quite a few situations, not just with their relationship, but also other situations as well. And the Regency setting with the Viscount hero, a Regency is not a Regency unless there's the landed gentry somewhere. So you at least have to have a minor character who's an aristocrat for me for it to be a Regency romance. So I really enjoyed seeing the Viscount hero who needs to get the finances and get everything sorted with his estate. And the season, I mean, it's so fun reading about balls and all the dancing and all the fun stuff that happens with the season. I enjoyed that part of the story. And the hilarious matchmaking. There were some very funny moments in this story related to these aunts and their matchmaking antics. And the family drama with the children, and you put children and animals together, and you get some very interesting situations, particularly when you have young children that have interesting pets like frogs. That definitely leads to some humor. And the rom com story elements were laugh out loud funny, and I really enjoyed that. And the Jane Austen connection with how Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility, which are both published when this story is being told, so back in the period of this story, it was just really fun to see the characters interacting with Jane Austen and her books without even knowing who she was because she was anonymous at that point in time. And I really loved the Jane Austen connections in the story. And my favorite book quote is this one. My mother often said humility was the best soil for wisdom to take root. And there's definitely a lot of wisdom in that. And it's actually our hero who's talking. So Simon's talking to Emmy's cousin, who's the rector of the parish. And Simon's really having to deal with the consequences of the men in his family making some very poor decisions and really being selfish and having no regard for anyone but their own needs. And that meant the estate has just fallen into complete chaos. And also, his own family has fallen into chaos in connection to what's gone on with his parents as well. So Simon really is picking up the pieces and learning about humility in the way the story plays out. And this one I would describe as having relevant faith elements that are subtle on the page, and forgiveness themes play a major role in the story. And that's usually the case with enemies to love because something has gone wrong for the relationship to have fallen apart originally. So there's usually a forgiveness element that's involved in moving past the issues that went wrong because if your characters are still holding grudges, they can't have a romantic happily ever after at the end. So, in terms of the impact on me, it was laugh out loud funny. And there was one particular scene that was so funny, and I was laughing so much, I was actually having trouble getting the words out to describe to my husband why I'm laughing hysterically and can barely talk. So I know everyone has different ideas about humor, but there was one particular scene that really had me almost in tears laughing. It was so funny. Well, I thought it was hilarious anyway, and I really enjoyed that. And at the same time, there were some very poignant moments, especially because our main characters and their family had been dealing with heartache and they were dealing with grief and loss in terms of having lost family members. Our leading lady, Emmy, is the only one that has a parent alive, so her father is alive. Simon and Emmy have both lost their mothers, and Simon's lost his father as well. So there's a lot of stuff that goes with that, and particularly for the younger children being orphaned, it was quite difficult for them to adjust. And they were quite fearful as well about who their brother was going to marry because that was going to have a massive impact on their lives as well, whoever he took as a wife. So, and I loved how Emmy and the younger children related. It was really lovely and fun to see in the story. So the other thing that I really thought about was back in Regency times, just how hard it was for people to overcome their social station and how difficult it was to marry for love unless you had the right social status and the right bank balance to go with that as well. And that was explored in the story in as well in terms of the romantic conflict between Emmy and Simon. So, in summary, I would recommend Sense and Suitability to readers who like Regency rom-coms, enemies to love romances, and second chances romance, to readers who like bookish characters and family drama that includes hilarious children and animals interacting in very interesting ways, and readers who appreciate Jane Austen. I'm not a big purist when it comes to Jane Austen. So I've read Sense and Sensibility, but I could not tell you in detail what the storyline is. So I appreciated those story elements, but not being an enormous fan of Jane Austen to the point of knowing the story in detail, I can't tell you whether or not, if you're a big fan of Jane Austen, how close this is to being realistic, etc. But I thought it was fabulous from my perspective. So if you like a Jane Austen connection with Sense and Sensibility, then you'll like this one. And you'll like this story if you like relevant faith elements in your story that have forgiveness themes that play out. Thanks for joining me today. Does Sense and Suitability sound like a book that you'd like to read? Have you read it? What did you think? You can let me know. If you're listening on the podcast, you can send me a text via a link in the show notes. If you're watching at YouTube, you can like the episode at YouTube and you can also leave a comment at YouTube. You can also email me via my website where I have a contact form, and that's at narelleatkins.com. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe via your favorite podcasting app or subscribe to my channel at YouTube so you won't miss an episode and will get notified when the next one drops. And also, if you did enjoy this episode, please share the link with a friend, especially a friend who enjoys Regency romance and Jane Austen's type stories, and also a friend who you think would enjoy reading Pepper Basham's books. Thanks for tuning in and see you next time.